Hello and welcome to the Mastermind, Body, and Spirit Show. I'm your host, Matt Belair. Today's guest is a medical doctor and one of America's top urologists. He serves as the chief representative for urologists to the American Medical Association, as well as immediate past president of the California Urological Association. He advocates on behalf of the many needs of his patients as well as across the nation. He has appeared on hundreds of TV and radio health reports and in as many newspaper and magazine articles. He is a regularly featured expert on the Doctor's Daytime TV show and is a nationally recognized expert in male fertility and contraception, microsurgical vasectomy reversal, low testosterone, erectile dysfunction, and more. He is the author of The Penis Book, a doctor's guide to the penis from size to function and everything in between. Welcome to the show, Dr. Aaron Spitz.
Thank you. It's a real pleasure to be here, and I really appreciate having the opportunity to share with you today.
Yeah, me too. I know. I'm happy to have you on. I got forwarded your book, and I was telling the publicist, like, I don't even know what to ask him. And I was telling you a little bit before the show. It's interesting that I found, even in me, you know, being 34-year-old male adult, like, it's something that we kind of push away. You know what I mean? For me, and I think many others, it's not a comfortable thing. And so I think that's important to talk about this aspect of health, because a lot of men are going through a lot of different things, and I don't even know where to start. So do you want to give a little bit about your background and what you're doing and the inspiration behind the book?
Yeah, sure. So as you stated, I am a urologist, and I subspecialize in male fertility, but also in male sexual function. And as a result of that, I found myself meeting, many men who are very confused, very anxious about bad information about their own penises. And this is something that I think all urologists encounter. And even just general doctors don't have a working knowledge and a comfort level with the penis that urologists do. So even when a guy goes and sees a regular doctor, they may not come away with that information that they need or that they want, unless they happen to get referred into the hands of a specialist like me. And not everybody has access to that. Well, I know that information is really valuable and really important for men and for women as well, because there's confusions on both sides of the penis. But I also have found myself to have the opportunity to be an educator to the public. In the general media. And as you pointed out, I'm a frequent guest on the television show, The Doctors. And I have spent many episodes demystifying topics around male sexuality and sometimes female sexuality as well. And as a result of my lifelong career specializing in this area, educating my patients one-on-one, and then educating the public in general, those influences, that experience, and that body of knowledge that I've built up and the expertise I gained in conveying that knowledge, all culminating in me putting together and putting out this book, The Penis Book. So The Penis Book is really a synthesis of all that knowledge and experience filtered through a communication style that I hope and I've heard is really accessible, something that you can pick up, read, get a great deal of learning and understanding, but also be entertained, be amused, and carry you through to the end of the book.
Awesome, man. Yeah, it seems incredibly valuable for sure. Like I said at the beginning, there's not a lot of info out there, and it's not something that's regularly talked about until there's like a problem. And then you go figure it out right away, because like, oh goodness, we need this thing to work. So I'm not sure like the best way to start, but one of the questions that was given and I really like is like, what is sexual anti-aging? There's a lot of topics we could go into, but maybe you're most familiar with, what are the largest problems, right? 90% of the problems are this, then followed by 70% this. And so maybe you can kind of go that way chronologically and give some information.
Absolutely. Well, sexual anti-aging is a great place to start because it really ties into what you said about how people don't really think about the penis in a medical or scientific way until there's a problem. And when is there a problem? Most commonly as we start to get older. Well, define older. Well, it's not as old as we think. When I was your age, I thought my age was pretty old. I'm 51. But the effects of age start to hit the penis younger than you would ever imagine. Actually, there's some evidence that even towards the end of the 20s into the 30s, for some guys, the effects of aging are starting to take root on the root. And sexual anti-aging is understanding what aging does to the penis and to sexual function, and then what we can do to slow that down or reverse it. So I'd like to first start out by explaining what an erection is and then how aging affects that, even for guys in their late 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. And as we go through those decades, the percentage of those guys affected goes from maybe 20% of guys in their 20s, 30 in their 30s, 40 in their 40s, 50 in their 50s, and so. I mean, it's quite dramatic, and it gets more and more relevant as we age. So let me just explain what an erection is, how that works. You know, when you wake up with morning wood, what's going on down there? So the penis is comprised, the shaft of the penis is comprised of two cylinders, or think of them as like animal balloons, elongated balloons. And instead of inflating with air, they inflate with blood. Blood rushes in and expands them. And like a balloon, they will expand and lengthen, but unlike a balloon, only to a degree, and then they won't expand and lengthen anymore. A balloon will just keep going until it pops. The lining of these cylinders is really flexible, but it's really tough. And so at some point, it stops expanding, and it just gets firmer and firmer, kind of like when you pump up a tire. A tire will expand to a degree, and then it just gets firmer and firmer. And that's what's happening as blood is filling the penis. And then once it can't fill up anymore and it can't take any more pressure, that blood is just trapped in there for some period of time. And then eventually, after, say, you ejaculate or some other influence that causes you to release adrenaline, the adrenaline counteracts the flow of blood in the penis. Penis then deflates. Now, how is it possible that the penis could trap the blood inside itself? Well, it's a really clever design. The interior of these two chambers is filled with these tiny blood vessels that really look like a sponge, like a really intensely fine sponge. And every little wall of that sponge is a blood vessel that has a little layer of muscle in it. And that muscle can either be contracted, closing the space up, or can be relaxed, expanding and allowing blood to flow through it. So during an erection, there is a chemical released into that spongy space due to a nerve signal. And I'm not sure if did you lose me there for a moment? I think the connection.
I can hear you, but the video would freeze a little bit, but I could hear you perfectly.
Okay, so what I was saying is that during an erection, there's a signal that travels through nerves, say from the brain, to that spongy space in the penis, and those nerve endings release this molecule, nitric oxide. And nitric oxide causes the muscles in those blood vessels to relax, to open up, and allow the blood to flow in. Now, when the blood flows in and expands it, the pressure of that expanding sponge pushes against the walls of the cylinders, and in the walls of the cylinders are the veins that let the blood drain out. And when you have a good, strong erection, the inner sponge tissue is pressing so hard against the walls that it doesn't allow the blood to drain out of the veins. It pinches them off, kind of like pinching a garden hose. And no blood can leave the penis, and the blood is trapped in. That's what happens to make a good, solid, healthy erection. So here's what happens with age. As we get older, and starting in our 20s for some of us, those smooth muscles in those little blood vessel spaces, they have come under attack by toxins, free radicals. From the day you're born, they're under attack. But our body has this really good mechanism to counteract it, antioxidants and nitric oxide. But at some point, the battle gets lost. And those free radicals, those toxins, start to cause the smooth muscle cells to deteriorate and to die off. And instead of being smooth muscle tissue, they get replaced by fibrotic collagen. when that happens, they can't expand as much. And that whole sponge can't get as large and as intense against the walls of the chamber. And now those veins can leak the blood back out of that erection, and the erection can never get fully pumped because it starts to drain away. And that happens with aging starting in the 20s, and some guys, more guys in their 30s, 40s, 50s, etc. That's the most common reason that men have difficulty keeping their erection or even getting an erection. And so anti-aging, sexual anti-aging is A, understanding that that's the mechanism, and then B, looking at, well, what is causing that and what can we do to prevent it or to slow it down? I mentioned toxins. Toxins are in our environment, but we feed ourselves toxins all the time with the choices we make with what we eat. You eat a bunch of processed sugar, that releases a bunch of toxins in your circulation that's having that effect on the smooth muscles of your penis. You eat a lot of fats, you eat a lot of animal products, okay, toxins. And of course, processed foods with added toxins. You work by a refinery, okay, you breathe polluted air, you swim in bad water. All of those things are toxins, but food itself is a big key. And then inactivity, just sitting on the couch, not getting up and moving your body, becoming obese. The fat that you carry on your body itself are like little toxin factories releasing toxins into your blood that's killing your penis tissues. So we can make some simple choices. Let's eat foods that are beneficial, that have antioxidants, that are not toxic. And what are those foods? Well, they're easy to find. They're in the produce section. So vegetables, fruits, whole grains, beans, plant-based foods actually have antioxidant properties that can help slow down or reverse that aging process in the penis. So does exercise. Exercise actually causes us to release nitric oxide and other antioxidants from our cells into the blood to help protect ourselves. And our body itself tries. Once we get to that age where we're starting to lose the battle, our body will start to upregulate, start to produce more of its own nitric oxide. It does it through an enzyme called nitric oxide synthase. And that exists in our nerves, in our blood vessels, and in other tissues, our immune cells. And it's been shown that once we get to our 20s, 30s, all of a sudden there's this bump up in production of nitric oxide to try to keep up with the deterioration from the toxins. But unfortunately, in the end, ultimately we lose. But we can slow it down if we have more nitric oxide around for the body to work with. And perhaps if we can live and eat in a way that promotes what our body is trying to do. So in addition to eating well and exercising, there are also some supplements that can work with nitric oxide, that can help boost nitric oxide. And there's even prescription medications that work at the level of nitric oxide. We're all familiar with Viagra, right, and Cialis. The way these pills work to give you an erection is they cause the nitric oxide that gets released into the penis to hang around longer, to keep it from its effects being shut down as soon as they normally would. It's like a turbocharge. And it's been shown that in animal studies, when you have an animal receive a medication like Cialis long-term, there's actually a protective effect on their blood vessels because that nitric oxide has been able to work and linger longer and protect the blood vessels from the effects of aging. Well, there are foods that are rich in nitric oxide, particularly green leafy vegetables, kale, spinach, and beets. Beets and red beets, really good high sources of nitric oxide. And then there are also natural supplements. There's an amino acid, L-arginine. L-arginine gets converted into nitric oxide. And you can take L-arginine supplements over the counter. The problem is, though, is that L-arginine gets broken down very quickly when it goes out of your stomach or your intestines into the bloodstream, because it has to stop in the liver first, and then the liver gets broken down. So you really don't get that much L-arginine where you need it. But there's another amino acid, L-citrulline, which does get absorbed very well. And then in the blood, it then gets converted to L-arginine, and then the L-arginine gets converted to nitric oxide. So it's important to understand the subtleties of supplements, because not all supplements, just because they do it in the lab doesn't mean they do it in your stomach or in your body. A colleague of mine, Dr. Jacob Rafer, who's a professor at UCLA, a urologist, was the guy who characterized in the New England Journal of Medicine how nitric oxide causes the muscles, those little smooth muscles in the penis, to open up and expand. He made that discovery back in 1992. And Viagra came out around, I think, 1998 or 1997. So he was one of the instrumental pioneers in even understanding this mechanism. Well, his lab set to the task of looking at nutritional supplements to say, okay, there's a lot of supplements out there that claim to be, a natural Viagra. What do these different ingredients do? And through a really rigorous scientific process, doing experiments in the Petri dish, in animals, and even some preclinical studies in guys, they determined that a particular combination of natural ingredients, which is that L-citrulline that I mentioned, ginger, dried ginger powder, and a couple of plants from Brazil that have been commonly known to help with erections, in Brazilian culture, which is guarana and marapuima, that these four in combination actually caused nitric oxide to be produced, to be generated from that nitric oxide synthase enzyme in the blood vessels of rats when they studied them. And they actually saw that effect on human penis tissue as well. So here's a supplement or a combination of ingredients that does help the body, the blood vessels, increase their own production of nitric oxide to try to counteract the aging process. And when they looked at rats, and they took rats that had a genetic disposition to diabetes, so their blood vessels got deteriorated much more rapidly, because diabetes deteriorates your blood vessels more rapidly than normal. And when they took kind of mature rats and they gave them this combination of these ingredients, and then they gave them a few months on them, and then they actually examined the penises and the function of the penis, as well as the cellular structure of that little spongy tissue in the penis, what they saw was that in those rats that were given those supplements, there was no aging of that tissue compared to the ones that weren't given those supplements. And in fact, the tissue, in some cases, actually looked younger than the starting point. So it had an anti-aging, a sexual anti-aging effect on the penises of these rats. And the mechanism of the nitric oxide production from these supplements, like I said, could be seen in human penis tissue as well. So this combination of ingredients is now available as a supplement commercially called Revactin. And it's available through the Revactin.com website. It's pretty new on the market, but I think it's a very interesting and exciting supplement for sexual anti-aging. And given that this process of aging in the penis happens at a pretty young age for a lot of guys, I think it would be wise to try to eat properly, exercise, avoid toxins, and consider a supplement such as Revactin well before you experience erectile dysfunction, because it's happening, and you don't want to have to deal with it when it's already there. You want to try to stay a step ahead of that game.
Okay, crap. You said a lot of stuff there. I'm going to throw a lot of things at you, and then you kind of pick and choose as you wish. Okay. So I think for me, it's understanding what men might be going through. So if it's erectile dysfunction, what I'm hearing, what do you think about, like, okay, so you have that exercise is important. Diet's important. Then you have work like Dr. Joe Dispenza using the mind. So you're using, positivity, things like that, meditation to make that work. So that's going to probably, if you do those things, most people don't want to exercise or do the, eat the vegetables and all that kind of stuff. So I think that with anything in health, that's the main thing: exercise, clean diet, and then use your mindset. And then it kind of goes into the spiritual kind of stuff where, sometimes in the spiritual world, they say, don't masturbate, that's bad. And I'm curious about a doctor's view on that. And there's also a lot of information in like the yoga world about that sexual energy is the most powerful energy, right? And so if you just spew it away, that's no good. But what you can learn to do through different breathing and processes is bring that energy up into the pineal gland, so you have this like activated experience. And I don't know if these are common questions that you get, but I just wanted to kind of put all of that your way to just give your thoughts on it. And then the last thing was, I think that people out there who really want kids, I have a really amazing friend who really wants kids and he was unable to. And I'm just curious if you can give some advice on that. So the hippie spiritual stuff, how much masturbation is too much masturbation, and super penises for babies.
Okay.
Oh, Jesus, that sounded so bad, to make babies.
I think we know what you meant.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, addressing the spiritual question, I don't propose to know what the absolute truths are with spirituality and topics that are mystical, but I think we could all agree that there are definitely times throughout human history when religious explanations are proffered up for phenomenon that we don't understand, and later on the phenomenon is explained in the physical world. So when I give you an answer, it's not to be dismissive that there are no mystical phenomenon or that there are no spiritual realities, but I will propose to you that let's look at what we understand about the physical to try to answer these questions about our physical sexual behavior and use that as a foundation, okay? So with regards to masturbation, there really is not a physical harm that you can do to your body from the standpoint of some sort of side effect from masturbation. I know that when I was a kid, there was folklore that if you masturbated too much, you'd go blind, or you might grow hair on your palms, or some stigmata, so people would know what you were doing. And of course, that's completely false.
Oh man. I heard about that, but I didn't know it was actually true. It'd be so terrifying as a kid. Like, I don't know if it's like a religious thing. Is it's like, if you do this, God's going to make you go blind. Like, oh my God.
Well, that's why I was always so jealous of Stevie Wonder, because he was off the hook. But so at any rate, it has been studied. Should you ejaculate more or less to avoid prostate cancer? Should you ejaculate more or less for erectile function, for lifespan? These questions have actually been asked and studied scientifically, and the results are variable. And there really is no conclusive evidence that ejaculating has a direct link to a particular health problem or a particular health benefit. So, no, I don't think that you can have any kind of physical harm from masturbating in general. But having said that, if we move into the psychological realm, there are cases on the extreme, and it's usually on the extremes where you're going to find the problems. But there are cases on the extremes of masturbation where you can reprogram yourself to not be able to respond sexually to anybody else but you. If you masturbate in a way that is very particular and you become dependent on that very particular sensation in order to reach a sexual climax, in order to ejaculate, in that way, masturbation can be bad for you in terms of inhibiting your ability to have that kind of an intense connection with another person. So there are examples. I've had a patient in my practice where his particular idiosyncratic style of masturbation was he would lay face down on a hard floor and rub his pelvis against the floor in a particular way, at a particular rhythm and speed, until he climaxed. And that sensation just couldn't be reproduced with penetrative intercourse. And he was not able to reach sexual satisfaction with partnered sex. He's not the only one in the world. There are many examples of that kind of thing. It may not be laying on the floor, but some particular, what we call idiosyncratic masturbatory style. So that's what you have to watch out for. But just masturbating as much as you feel that you'd like to is fine. However, there's another dimension to it that, again, going over to the psychological and actually the physical behavioral, and that's pornography, right? Masturbation often goes hand in hand, so to speak, with pornography. And pornography, in and of itself, if viewed very frequently, and what do I mean by frequently? I mean daily or several times a week, which many people do now because it's so available. It's literally available in the palm of your hand on a smartphone. It has been shown to cause real damage to a man's sexual responsiveness. And it's not just psychological, it's actually causing changes in brain centers that can be measured on MRIs, where brain centers can be measurably seen to shrink that are responsible for sexual enjoyment and for arousal. Much in the same way that these kinds of brain centers can be seen to shrink in drug addicts who are chronically exposed to drugs requiring higher and higher levels to reach the same sort of normal. This happens with pornography as well. So masturbation with pornography on a very frequent basis can in fact injure your ability to respond sexually and impair those pleasure centers of your brain.
Awesome. I'm glad you went into that because that's kind of what my thought was, because it's interesting you talk about the masturbation piece, because I've seen it come up more and more, and I guess it's like a problem, like people in relationships I've kind of heard like, oh, he's got this issue, and that's kind of how I understood it, where like I guess when you go and you masturbate and you have like there's something in the neurons of the brain, it kind of like that quick fix, like video games where that's dropping down and you kind of get that sound, right? And then it's just this quick what's the chemical, the endorphin that's released, and so
Right.
you're doing that over and over and you're desensitizing your body, but it's mostly a psychological thing that you're experiencing. And there's actually even a podcast that just, I was doing some research on like health podcasts, and there was like a top one, and it was just about how to stop masturbating because it's become such an issue.
Let me just clarify. I'm not saying that masturbating in and of itself ruins your sexual responsiveness to a partner. I'm very specifically saying viewing pornography with or without masturbating. But it's masturbating and using your imagination is one thing. And I don't know that there's any evidence that it actually impairs sexual responsiveness at sort of, typical levels of masturbation. And I'm not actually advocating for a prohibition on masturbation. But the neurological experience of getting pornographic visual information into your eyeballs frequently, that's a different story, whether you're masturbating or not. But I just brought it into the masturbation context because often people are masturbating with pornography. But even if you're not, that visual neurological input of that intense sexual information is damaging. And that's really where I'm focusing the prohibition on, or the de-escalating of exposures more to the pornography as opposed to the masturbation, on your own with your imagination.
Got it. Well, I'm really happy you clarified that, because in my mind, that's what I was thinking. So the words were different, so people might have misunderstood that. So I'm really glad that you clarified that. And so there's a couple different ways I want to go, but do you have any advice for someone who wants to stop? Because I've heard it's like one of the like major, I think it's like a newer form of addiction that it's just it's the quick fix, right? And and then like you said, it's so accessible, then you start getting in this pattern and now you're kind of like in it. And so if you have any advice for people who might be doing that, like what would you say?
Well, the good news is that these same scientific studies that are showing this to be a problem are also showing that it is reversible. So guys who have developed really severe problems with this, if they cut it out cold turkey, eventually as the months go by, they get better and better. So knowing that it's a problem, not just psychological, but physical is the first step. Because I think once you're aware that this is actually a problem, you realize that, hey, I need to stop this. It's not just a morality thing. It's not just a social stigma. It's my health, it's my body, it's my brain, it's tissues in my brain, okay? Kind of like if you didn't know cigarettes were bad for you and you smoked and I told you all the bad things about cigarettes, you might be like, well, gosh, I don't want to do that to myself anymore. You know, I like breathing. So I think that the knowledge that I'm putting out there today, which is not widely known, will help a lot of people get off that addiction because they didn't even realize it was a problem. They thought it was just in their head, but not truly in their head. And also the hope, the knowledge that in fact people who quit pornography cold turkey get better will motivate them that there is an end in sight.
Awesome. Cool. Very practical doctor answer. It's really good. And yeah, it's not common knowledge. I don't think even people that are doing it are stuck in it are aware of.
Yeah, I presented this information to a very high level group of academic urologists who are chairman of departments at an academic conference about 2 years ago, right before my book came out, because I have a chapter on this in my book, all about it, getting into all the details of the biology and the psychology and the studies. And the chapter is called Sex, Lies, and Videotape. And so this room full of, the smartest guys in the country were amazed and shocked. They were not aware. And subsequent to my presentation to them, I've now seen a couple of academic presentations on the same exact topic at our national meeting. So it's just starting to come into the awareness of more and more people, but it's really, really hardly known at all.
Right. Awesome. Yeah. I'm really glad you shared that. I want to throw some things your way because we have some like about 15 minutes or so. And so I want to see where you want to pick up, but I know that, a really delicate subject for people who want to have kids. Do you have any recommendation for them? The other one, it would be just like, what are some do's and don'ts for like a healthy, ideally, like if you go in the optimized world, how do you optimize and make like a super penis,
Yeah.
And then that will lead into kind of like, quote unquote dysfunctions. I don't know how many there are, but one of the ones that I'm familiar is like, premature ejaculation. You don't last long enough. And then when you go into that world and you research it, you can find some crazy stuff. I remember just like my friend telling me some thing about like a hot sauce, and I was like, what the hell, man? And I was like, people do weird stuff. So can you like kind of clarify and give some overview on all of that?
Yeah, so let's start with fertility. About 15% of couples are infertile, and about half the time some of the fault or all of the fault is on the male side, but most people assume it's the female side. So if you're in a couple and you guys are infertile, the guy should get checked. Don't put it all off on the woman. Go get a sperm test. See where you're starting out. There are a variety of reasons why a guy's sperm count may be low or even zero. They range from a genetic cause to diet and lifestyle. But a real common cause is varicocele, which is enlarged veins around the testicles. Kind of feels like a squishy bunch of stuff in the scrotum above the testicle. A lot of the causes of low sperm count are improvable, are correctable. But even when there are causes that are not improvable, our technology is so good with insemination or even more intensely successful in vitro fertility that we can usually work around the problem, even if the sperm production is very low. So male infertility is something that's common. It's underdiagnosed. It's very underdiagnosed. And when it is diagnosed, it can be managed. So that's the quick answer on fertility. But like everything else, good diet, good clean diet, exercise, avoiding toxins, avoiding drugs, excess alcohol. Can you drink? Yeah, you can drink. 5 to 7 drinks a week is probably fine. Smoke? No. So that's fertility. When we look at, you were asking, common dysfunctions with the penis. Erectile dysfunction is really common, and it happens now and then to most guys, even young guys like you, younger than you. If you understand how erections work and the fact that there's this aging process, you'll understand that for guys in their 50s, 60s, 70s, this is usually a physical problem, okay? It's just the the blood vessels and the tissues are just not as good as they used to be. Okay, it's not the fault of the person. It's not the psychological fault of the person in most cases. But in young guys, your age, younger, it usually is psychological. It usually is behavioral. And what is happening there? Well, it's usually something really simple. Maybe the guy had an off day, he had a cold or something. Something was up, threw him off, he had a bad night. Well, the next time he gets in the saddle, he may have this thought that pops in his head. What if I have trouble tonight like I did the last time? Well, that very thought causes him anxiety, and anxiety causes him to release adrenaline. A real chemical, adrenaline. We like adrenaline. Adrenaline's cool, right? Extreme sports and all the fun stuff we do with adrenaline. But adrenaline causes the blood in your body to go to your heart and lungs and brain and away from the less vital parts, like your fingers, your toes, and your penis. That way, if you get into an accident or you get attacked, you get something while you're on your adrenaline, it's preserving you from losing a lot of blood. Well, the problem is adrenaline and erections do not mix. And so when you have that simple thought, I wonder if I'm going to have trouble, you release adrenaline and boom, the blood flow to your penis gets shunted away and you can't get your erection, you can't keep your erection. Well, guess what happens the third time you're up to bat? I wonder if I'm going to have trouble like I did those other two times. Boom, adrenaline, and it's a vicious circle. And that's the most common cause for erectile dysfunction in younger guys. And if you understand that, you can kind of step away from the brink, use these techniques like meditation and focus to calm. And if that's not enough, there are behavioral sexual specialists that have really great techniques to help kind of calm that down. But even then, we can work around it. We can prescribe medications like Viagra, Cialis, Levitra, which are typically stronger than the adrenaline, get you back in the saddle, give you several sexual episodes that are successful, rebuild your confidence, then you can stop taking the medication and kind of coast again back on your own normal baseline. And the good news is that those prescription medications really have no harm. They only have harm if you have a bad heart and you're taking nitroglycerin. That nitroglycerin combo is the only danger. Otherwise, these medications are very useful, they're very helpful, and in some cases even healthy.
Awesome. Cool. Very informative, and I appreciate that. So I was curious about a couple things too. Like, is there an effect on like depression and anxiety in general with this? Like, does it have an effect on the function? And the other one that you touched on, it's coming up a lot lately, is TRT. A friend of mine wrote a book called The TRT Bible, a testosterone replacement theory, testosterone. What's your view on all of that stuff?
Well, before I answer those questions, let me answer a question you did ask before that I neglected to answer, and that was about premature ejaculation and how to optimize your penis.
Yes.
Okay. So premature ejaculation is a very common syndrome, and it's not really a disease. It's not really a disorder. It's just really, in most cases, how guys are wired. Some guys are wired to ejaculate quickly. Some guys aren't. Now, there are other more sophisticated reasons why a person can develop it, but in many cases, it's just kind of what your baseline is. And fortunately, we can improve that if you desire. Probably in a much more ancient time, sex was not nearly as recreational as it is today. And so we didn't focus so much on the nuances of our sexual experience. But now it really is a recreational event and a very elective event, and having children and all of these things we've gained so much more control over. And so a behavioral specialist in sexual medicine can retrain a person to last longer with exercises that are called sensate focus or stop start, where a person is brought to the brink and then they back away. And these are exercises they can do with themselves with masturbation or with a partner. And I do highlight what that's all about in the penis book. There's a chapter that has information on that, but it's best done, with a specialist. But there's even an app that can take you through that technique called the PEA app, Premature Ejaculator app. And it's got a little cartoon doctor in there who walks you through the steps. So you can retrain that neurological reflex to last longer, kind of like you can train yourself to hold your breath longer and longer. Or you can use a topical spray. There's different topical sprays out there that have lidocaine in them that numb the nerves of the penis. And a really good one is called Promescent, available at promescent.com. And it's a lidocaine spray, but the formula allows it to absorb nicely and not cause your partner to be numb. And it doesn't make your penis numb. It just takes that sensation down a notch so you can last longer. And it's really effective. And then there are prescription pills, which can work on the nerves, internally, if the topical is not your cup of tea or it's not working out. But one way or another, there are definitely remedies to enable you to ejaculate longer if you desire to. As far as, optimizing the penis, hacking your penis, if you will. I think now that we understand what causes erections and what deteriorates them, you want to really get out ahead of the deterioration of the smooth muscles of your penis. You want to get out ahead of those toxins and of those free radicals. And so, as I said before, the earlier you can adopt a healthy diet, and I would promote actually a vegan or mostly vegan diet, honestly, and regular exercise, the better. You want to get a good night's sleep. You asked about testosterone and testosterone replacement. When we sleep is when the signals that cause our testicles to produce testosterone surge. And when we don't get a good night's sleep, we're not getting those surges of testosterone that we could be getting. And the testosterone helps the penis tissues to function properly, as well as gives us, our sex drive and all those other great benefits of testosterone, muscle mass and immune strength. And in fact, if you have low testosterone, you have a shorter lifespan. So testosterone is important. A good night's sleep is important along that way. And then you want to make sure you're not getting caught up in excess alcohol and drugs. These things will impair your erections and impair your body. If you can't help it, you may find yourself with certain medical conditions that require certain medications that have side effects. But to the extent that you can keep yourself healthy, you can keep your penis optimized. And then there's supplements. And I mentioned the Rivactin supplement, which I think has really good science behind it as sort of this anti-aging effect on your penis tissues with its ability to increase the production of nitric oxide, along with all the foods that are rich in nitric oxide, the green leafy vegetables, beets, etc. And then staying away from porn. Optimize your penis by not putting mental toxins into those brain centers that control erection. And then knowledge. Understanding how your penis works already puts you on the road towards hacking your penis. So, pick up a book like my book, The Penis Book, which is really, I would say the ultimate penis hack.
Oh man. Well, I appreciate that. It's a very, very valuable information. And I think it's going to add a lot of clarity for a lot of people because, it's not a common discussion. And even when I hear it, it doesn't sound like an educated one. It's just like, a couple of weird things you looked up on the internet. I want to thank you for your time. Is there, I guess you've listed them pretty much very well, like the do's and don'ts. But is there anything like I should have asked or that we missed or that was common that you want to share about before we close this up?
Yeah, let me go ahead and answer your question about testosterone replacement.
Yeah.
Because that is a really important issue to understand. I see a lot of guys coming into my practice who are asking for testosterone or who are on testosterone, and sometimes appropriately, but in many cases not. So testosterone is an essential male hormone. It is what gives us our muscle strength, our sexual characteristics, our sex drive. It's important for our erections. It's important for our bone strength. And it's important for our very lifespan, longevity. And as we get older, just as our penis starts to deteriorate, so does our testosterone production from our testicles. That will start to dwindle. And as men get older, testosterone levels get lower. And for some men, it drops below normal levels and into a level that really is causing them harm. So it is a legitimate thing that a guy could need testosterone. But there are a lot more guys who think they need testosterone than actually do. Because the symptoms of low testosterone can also be the symptoms of stress and daily life. Those symptoms are fatigue, depression, low sex drive, falling asleep earlier in the day. Well, you know what? If you work too hard and don't get enough sleep and under severe stress, you can have all those symptoms. But you could have all those symptoms and think it's just because your life is stressful and be missing the boat that you actually have low testosterone and actually need some help. It's more common as guys get into their 40s, 50s, 60s. But if you do have symptoms of poor erections, low sex drive, fatigue, not seeming to make the gains for your exercise that you used to, these kinds of things, don't hesitate. Go into your doctor and get a blood test to see what your testosterone level is. That's how you know. It's a blood test. And if your testosterone is truly low, and best to verify it on a couple of tests because it can fluctuate from one day to another, then boosting your testosterone makes sense. Now, here's the catch. If you're a young guy and you're trying to have children, do not go on testosterone. Because when you go on testosterone, although it gives you the benefits of bringing your testosterone up to normal so that you can have all the physical benefits and requirements from testosterone that your body has, it shuts off your body's own production. You now are using this external source of testosterone. It might be an injection. It might be a lotion or a gel that you put on your skin. It's not a pill, but you now are relying on that for your testosterone, and your body's inner production goes into hibernation. When you stop taking testosterone, you'll ramp back up, but it can take many months. And occasionally it won't happen if you like really over-rev the system by taking too much testosterone. But when you take testosterone and you shut down and hibernate your body's production, you're also hibernating your body's production of sperm. So when you go on testosterone, your sperm shuts down. Don't use testosterone to make yourself more fertile. It's just the opposite. And even some doctors don't realize that. I've seen infertile men who are put on testosterone by their other doctor. The good news is it's reversible. If you're a young guy, you want to preserve your fertility, and you have low testosterone, there are other ways you can boost it with other kinds of prescriptions that work on the pituitary gland signal to your testicles, boosting that, or other injections that mimic those hormones so that your testicles are still the source of testosterone and the source of sperm. One such injection is HCG. And the problem with HCG is there's a lot of like street knowledge about HCG, and there's a lot of guys who give themselves testosterone, they're getting it on the black market, and they go, well, I read on the forums, if I give myself a shot of HCG once a week, or if I run a cycle of, a week of HCG shots every month, that'll protect my sperm. Couldn't be further from the truth. None of that works. The only way you can preserve your sperm with HCG and testosterone is a very precise and frequent combination of the two that none of the forums discuss. So you have to be careful with testosterone. It should always be given because of an actual diagnosis of low testosterone and under the supervision of a doctor, because there can be problems. Sometimes the red blood cells can get too much production. You can get sludgy blood and get a stroke. Or if you have prostate cancer brewing and didn't know it, it can possibly grow faster. There are things that can happen. Not a lot. Testosterone by and large is very safe, but it's one of those things that still needs to be monitored. Shouldn't be done on your own in the gym.
Right. Thank you for all that. Well, what came up for me was HGH. Is that similar to HCG? I know HGH came up a few times. Can you shed some quick light on that?
They sound the same, but they're radically different.
Okay, cool.
HGH is human growth hormone.
Yep.
That is the hormone that we all make to allow us to go from, embryos to fetuses, infants, and actually from fetuses to children, not embryos, but it's what makes our bones grow and our muscles grow and our organs grow. And at some point it decreases, but the levels that humans have are the normal levels. And in an effort to prevent aging or reverse aging, people use growth hormone injections because as we get older and deteriorate, we do have less growth hormone stimulating our muscles and our tissues. And so that is used as an anti-aging strategy, or it's used as a legitimate medical strategy for children who don't have enough growth hormone and aren't growing properly, okay? HCG, on the other hand, is human chorioniotrophic gonadotropin. Big name. And what it is it's a hormone that mimics a hormone from our pituitary gland that stimulates our testicles to wake up and produce testosterone. So when you take HCG, it stimulates your testicles to make more testosterone. It doesn't have anything to do with the growth of your muscles or the anti-aging effects like human growth hormone does. It may have an indirect effect because by boosting your testosterone production, you can get stronger, and in a way, that's like an anti-aging effect. But it's not that the growth hormone of HGH. HCG is a stimulator of testosterone.
Okay, cool. I appreciate that clarity. And the reason why I brought it up is just if when I heard about HGH, it wasn't being administered by doctors. It was people acquiring it
Yeah.
through other means. Is that something that doctors do prescribe at times?
Doctors legitimately prescribe it to children who have insufficient growth hormone and have stunted growth. But in the context of adults getting HGH, this is usually happening through boutique anti-aging practices. These may or may not be MDs. They may be naturopaths or chiropractors, and there may be some MDs who are into it, but it's not a traditional part of allopathic medicine, if you will. It's not. It's still, I would say, a work in progress.
So is it because the science isn't there? Because I had it explained to me as that, you know how you get it, right? It's a supplement. It's the new super thing. You know, you're going to be superhuman. And I know and I know people were taking it and having good results. Is it because that the science isn't there yet to confirm that it's safe and we don't have the side effects?
I think so. I think that, I mean, I'll tell you that there's not a lot of evidence that it's harmful. It's not as if there's a large body of information that says, there's all these cancers that occur. On the other hand, it hasn't really been studied in a proper way in that context. And, growth hormone stimulates cells to grow. And I think there is some concern that maybe there could be some unintended consequences of exposure to it. It doesn't look like it's a very dangerous thing to do, but on the other hand, it's not well studied. And so that's kind of where we're at with it right now.
Awesome. Well, Dr. Spitz, I appreciate your time. I know you're a busy man. That was very informative. So I'll give it the last question that I'll give to you is just like a general off the cuff. What are the doctor's tips for living a good life that's happy, manifesting your dreams, and just being happy in this crazy thing of a world? And plug your book and all that kind of stuff where we can find you.
Okay. Well, I would say eat well. And I would recommend moving in the direction towards a vegan diet. Whole food, plant-based foods is great. Get a good night's sleep, 7 hours. Shoot for 7 hours or more. If you're a teenager, more than that. Exercise regularly. Meditate. Meditation helps you practice being in the moment. And then when you're not meditating, try to be in the moment. Bad stuff hasn't happened. It's only what's happening right now. And if it's already happened, no need to replay it. And I think if you can adopt those tenets, you can have a good, happy life.
Amazing. Thanks. And where do we find your book?
Yes. Well, please find my book. It is available on BarnesandNoble.com, Amazon, Kindle, Audible, and it's also available in other languages. It's out in Dutch, in Italian. It'll be coming out in a few other languages, including Chinese, in the coming year. Please, it's a great idea for upcoming holiday present. I have several people I know who have bought it for their young boys, 11, 12, 13-year-olds as a primer, really. And it's a great book for women. I find that when women read the book, their ads are more excited than guys about the intel, the information they never knew, which is helpful for them and their partners. But yes, the penis book. Look for it online and in some stores as well.
Awesome. Well, Dr. Aaron Spitz, it's been a pleasure. Very informative. Thank you so much for coming on the show, and thank you for writing the book and trying to demystify everything penis.
I appreciate it. Thank you too. All right.
Take care. See you guys for watching. Thanks for watching. Peace.